We just wired up the Lieutenant Governor so you can hear him while he's eating breakfast over here. All right, so if you hear chewing, that's what that sound is. I'm Lyle Jepson, Executive Director of the Chamber and Economic Development. Thank you very much for being here this morning. We have a great crowd. We're excited that John Rodgers is with us, the new Lieutenant Governor. We'll do some introductions of him momentarily. But before that, again, I wanted to welcome you here. We will have on your table are some index cards as well as real Rutland pens. Please take those with you. That's a part of our regional marketing initiative where we're trying to attract more and more people to come here. On your table are some index cards and those pens. If you have questions for John, we would very much like you to write those down. And then Cooper's going to come around during the Q&A after John has an opportunity to speak, and we will have him answer as many of those questions as we can. The hard questions are in my pocket right here. And so I'm not going to give them to him in advance because I'm sure you already have the answers. So again, welcome. Please write your questions on the cards. Cooper will be around a little while. And because breakfast isn't free, which is what you found out when you went on and registered, we have a couple of announcements. One of which is that we have a mixer coming up at Stafford Technical Center next Tuesday night on the 11th, 5 o'clock, really not night, 5 to 7. If you'd like to come over, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary as a technical center here in the state and in Rutland, and we're excited about that. Having been a former director of the Tech Center, it's an exciting place to be. Fortunately, they got a good director after I left, and now it's even better. So I would encourage you to go to that mixer and enjoy that next Tuesday night, the 11th. Also, if you have not signed up for the Real Rutland Feud, which is one of the most exciting moments in time in Rutland, at the Paramount Theater on the 15th of February. It's a Saturday night, 7 o'clock, Paramount Theater, Real Rutland Feud. Go on to the website for the Paramount and sign up. The following teams are pairing off against each other. And sometimes it gets a little rowdy, so if you want, I would not bring a 3-year-old, but please, we have Rutland County Pride versus the Rutland Young Professionals. We have One Digital versus Best Appliance and Kitchen. We have Rutland Regional Planning Commission facing off against Cape Air. Watson Realty, this is going to be the battle. Watson Realty against Casella Real Estate. That's the one to watch. Boys and Girls Club versus the Mint Makerspace, so it's going to be exciting. Did I say Saturday night, the 15th of February at the Paramount Theater at 7 o'clock? Everyone's saying move on to the next announcement. Okay. If you have not been to a CEDRR mixer, everyone's welcome. You don't need to be a member of CEDRR. Just come to the mixers, and we have some coming up. One this coming month at Vista Senior Living. We also then will have a joint event at Proudy's Parlor, the ice cream parlor on Merchants Row, a joint event with Wonder Feet Kids Museum, and then Cape Air will be having a mixer at the Rutland Regional Airport. Those are coming up. Look for our newsletter. Everything's in there. And if that's not all, and I'm getting to the end, sorry Terry, getting to the end. We have a new event that we're doing, which will be May 20th with Castleton University and Bring Back the Trades. If you've had an opportunity to need a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter, you have to call like a year in advance sometimes to get things done that you need done. We need to focus on getting more people into the trades. And so we are teaming up with Bring Back the Trades and Castleton to bring up to 1,000 high school students to Castleton, where we will have vendors and we will have equipment, and we really want them to see what the trades are like. There are careers in the trades, and we want to show that off. Before we move along to our guest speaker, we would like to thank Omnia, who is our corporate sponsor, and sitting right up here next to me. Omnia is a worldwide, as you know, worldwide company, and they have over 135 employees. And as I was talking to John this morning, he pointed out that they support about 200 families in our region, from truck drivers to the people working in the shops to the electricians to the plumbers, which is outstanding and an economic opportunity for lots and lots of families. Well, as you know, they have a plant in Florence. They produce finely ground calcium carbonate, used in a wide array of products ranging from paint and vinyl to even diapers, which I didn't realize. They're very serious about their obligations to regulatory and environmental matters, but equally so to their employees and our local communities. They're invested in Vermont operations and are investing to ensure good-paying jobs for Vermonters a state-of-the-art production facility, and quality products for their customers. Their commitment includes providing a high-performance workplace with opportunities for advancement and capital improvements to enhance environmental protection. We thank them for being an economic driver and community leader in our region. We are lucky to have Omnia as a member of CEDRR and a partner for Vermont. Let's give them a nice round of applause. Thank you very much. We need businesses and more businesses like that in our region. And a special thanks to PEG TV. We have Rich Alnicki back there. We have Chelsea Vogel, and they are helping us today. Thank you very much. We didn't want to tell you that they were doing this today. It's a blackout according to everyone else, so you have to be here, but you didn't really have to be here. You can watch it again at your convenience. I want to thank them. Executive Director Tom Leopold, who could not be here today, wanted to remind our legislators that if you are running for office, that they can help you by having you go on as a legislative moment, and they can do some taping of your goals and your dreams for Vermont. That's a service provided by PEG TV. Also want to thank Southside Steakhouse. They do a wonderful job here. They are back in the kitchen. When they come back out, we'll thank them. But before we move on again to Lieutenant Governor Rodgers, we have legislators in the room. We always like to thank them for their support, and so I would like to do that right now. These are folks that get paid an exorbitant amount of money to go to Montpelier, driving back and forth in weather like we had today, or staying up there. And we want to thank them for doing that. They're working on our behalf every day, like Senator Brian Collamore, like Senator David Weeks, Senator Terry Williams, Representative Tom Burdett. Where'd Tom go? Right over here. And I was going to start to read off the towns, because you changed towns like at some point, and now that, yeah, so there's like 3 or 4 of them. They're wonderful, yes. All wonderful voters, yes. We also have David Bosch, Representative Bosch right here. We also have Representative Keyser right here. We have Representative Canfield right over here. I'm going to skip somebody, I just know it. Representative Harrison over here, all right. We also have Representative Howland right here in front of me. We have Representative Millay. Where is Representative Millay? Over here from Pittsford. We have Representative, is Todd Nielsen here? I don't know if I saw Todd come in. But let's give Todd a nice round of applause. He meant to be here. Okay. And also Chris Pritchard. Where's Chris? Right here. And Representative Kevin Winter right over here. This is where I say, who did I miss? Oh, good. All right. Thank you very much. And I have one more announcement. One more thank you. And that thank you is, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Rutland City Fire Department and all of our area firefighters who risk their lives for us every day. We've watched the fires in California. They're devastating. There's a common theme as we watch that unfold. And that common theme is the people who give of themselves and potentially their lives to go out and work on our behalf. Few of us will ever experience the risks they take for us. Only the firefighters and their families will ever know the level of commitment and the personal sacrifice that they offer to us every single day. Anything can happen at any time, and we're lucky to be protected by people we call our neighbors. Firefighters, law enforcement officers, first responders all stand ready for us. Today, it is with thanks that we welcome a representative from Rutland City Fire Department. I hope he's still here. Oh, he's right over here, all right. Who risked his life and the lives of all the folks that are working on our behalf every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to have Deputy Chief Dan Gendney come forward. Let's just say Deputy Chief Dan. All right. You know, I was a high school principal. I practiced kids' names at graduation. I never got it. I just never did. Okay. Well, on behalf of the Chamber and Economic Development and funds that have come through this morning breakfast, we would like to present you with a check for $500 to the Rutland Firefighters Employee Fund. We hope you will use that in any way you see fit. Ladies and gentlemen, wait, Deputy Chief Dan. All right. All right. All right, thank you very much. All right. And now I'd like to introduce Cooper Babbitt, who is our Operations Director, and he has an introduction that he would like to make as well.
Morning, everyone. How are you? My name is Cooper Babbitt. I'm the Operations Director at CEDRR and also moonlight as the index card guy. So make eye contact with me, flag me down, and I'll come and grab your index card. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Senator Brian Collamore. Senator Collamore was born in Detroit, Michigan, and moved to Vermont in 1968 to attend Middlebury College. I think I missed you by a couple years, or we could have roomed together maybe sophomore year, but if only my parents had me earlier. He's had a legendary career in broadcasting. He received the Distinguished Service Award from the Vermont Association of Broadcasters and was also inducted into their Hall of Fame. He's been an ice hockey official at the youth, high school, and college level since 1978. He's been in the Vermont legislature for 11 years and is currently the chair of the Senate Government Operations Committee. Senator Brian Collamore.
And I will add my thanks for being here. It's great turnout. I went to the website to see what I could say about our guest speaker today. Who is John Rodgers? Some of you may wonder. John grew up on a dairy farm in West Glover with his parents, John and Marie, his older brother, Mark, and sister, Diane. Young John attended Glover Community School through the 5th grade and then graduated from St. Paul's Catholic Middle School and then Sacred Heart High School in Newport, later receiving an associate's degree from New Hampshire Technical College. A rusty old Chevy Blazer, some hand tools, and a complete ladder set were all a 20-something John needed to launch his first business. Mostly doing brick and block work, he crafted countless chimneys, fireplaces, hearths, and other masonry structures. As his business matured, he began doing more dry-laid stonework. Maybe John could tell you exactly what that is. And slowly transitioned his business into excavation. John's favorite work is historic renovations, and they're all over the state, including the barn at Circus Mercus, the barn that is the globally famous one that is revered by the Bread and Puppet Museum. Brenda Brown and John, or Brenda married John 33 years ago. She is a registered nurse and works in St. Johnsbury in the surgical field. Brenda and John have 2 grown sons. The eldest, John, and his wife, Kristen, have 2 kids, and their youngest son, Derek, is a Navy vet. His wife, Stephanie, continues to serve in the U.S. Navy, working in communications at the White House. They have 1 son. John was first elected as collector of delinquent taxes in his hometown and went on to win election to the House of Representatives in 2003. He served there for 8 years. After taking a couple of years off, he won his district seat to the Vermont State Senate, serving for another 8 years there. So 16 years in the state legislature. He served on House Institutions and Corrections Committee, the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee, the Senate Institutions Committee, and the Judicial Nominating Committee. John and I think for 2 terms, worked together. He was on judicial nominating with me as well. I think we all got up a little bit early this morning to get here by 7:30. John left Glover this morning at 4:30 in order to get here. We found out about a week ago it takes 3 hours to get from Glover to Rutland, so we appreciate his attending today. Well regarded as a legislator who can work with people from all political parties and perspectives. He was endorsed by 3 former governors in his run for lieutenant governor. Current Governor Phil Scott, former governors Peter Shumlin and Jim Douglas all endorsed John. He's also the winner of every single town and city in Rutland County in the recently concluded election. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy to introduce our new Lieutenant Governor, John Rodgers.
Thank you, Brian. That list made me sound Do I have to turn it on? Oh, this does everything now? Whoa. That list made me sound older than I think I am, but yes, this is a little further than I usually travel for breakfast, and the traffic wasn't great this morning, but a wonderful breakfast. Thank you to the kitchen staff here. That was really great. Thanks to Omnia for putting it on. And thanks to all of you for coming out. And as Brian said, Rutland County treated me very well in the election, and I greatly appreciate that. I love it that Lyle was talking about the trades. I have lived and breathed the trades after I got out of agriculture, which I've kind of kept my hand in, even though I've had a masonry business since I was in my early 20s. And I believe that our high schools have tried to push every student to a four-year college, and that's part of the reason that the average age of a tradesman now is near my age, which is 59. When my generation decides to retire, we're going to be in serious trouble because, like my business, I currently book a year or two out. Every carpenter and plumber and electrician I talk to is going through the same thing. My local mechanic shop, sometimes I call to get my truck in, it's 2 or 3 weeks before they can get it in. These trades provide excellent opportunity for people to make a good income without college debt, without taking 4 years off to spend money on college when they could actually be making money as an apprentice. And I think it's time that Vermont focuses more on improving the trade schools that we have and developing more apprenticeship opportunities for Vermont high school kids. I have a cousin that went to school in Connecticut, and when he got to freshman year in their district, they got to choose. They either went to academic high school or they went to trade high school. He went to trade high school, studied electrical. When he came out, he went to work for a big electric company, and he worked his way up from his apprenticeship to his master's, worked for several big companies, ended up moving here to Vermont, starting his own business, and is doing unbelievably well. And like me, he is booking years in front of himself. So I think our high schools need to make sure that every kid knows that the only path isn't going to 4-year college, that there are great opportunities to build a trade, maybe work for somebody else, and then start your own business. And this is everything from the things that we think about, like carpentry and plumbing, to civil engineers and some of the programs that our colleges are putting kids through. There are some great courses for people that want to work in the trades and want to go to college as well. But I believe our high schools need to do a better job in making sure our kids know about those things. Just a couple things about what I learned on the campaign trail. I think something that everybody probably knows already. Affordability is the number one issue I heard on the campaign trail. The fact is that the income potential in Vermont is lower than a lot of states, and the cost of living here is higher than most states. That's not a good combination. We have to address that, because I heard many times from people who are getting near retirement age, as soon as I retire, I'm out of here. I can't afford to be here. Even more disturbing than that, I heard from a lot of folks in their prime working years who have kids in school that told me, when my kids are done school, I'm out of here. Now that's the demographic we need more of. We not only need those folks in their prime working years, but we would love it if their kids stayed here. Whether it's in the trades or as a doctor, a nurse, a dentist, a lawyer, all things that in rural Vermont we're having trouble attracting. So we have a lot of opportunity here if we can steer our youth in the right direction and try to get a handle on property taxes and affordability, so that they can look at the job opportunities and say, yes, I can make it here, I can live the American dream and buy a house. But what we have in a lot of places around the state are a bunch of young folks that look at the cost of buying a house and what they can make in that area, and they say, I'm never going to be able to own my own house. I'm going to have to live with my parents. I'm going to have an apartment. And if you're paying for that apartment, and apartments are so expensive now, are you ever going to be able to set enough money aside to buy that house? And so I see it as opportunity. I hope that the legislature sees it as opportunity. I hope that the message voters sent to the legislature in the last election lets them know that Vermonters want legislators to work together. I think I'm a prime example of that. I served many years as a Democrat. I recently switched to the Republican Party. I basically don't fit in any of the boxes, but here I am. And I think that's a testament to the fact that a lot of Vermonters can still look at a person and vote for a person. And I think the partisan labels, for some reason, over the last 20 years, people have decided they carry a lot of weight, and you're either one or the other. And I say there's good people in both parties, and we need more moderates, and we need to stop listening to the fringes so that we can address the things that most Vermonters agree on. Thank you. And with that, I'm happy to take questions, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability.
All right, there are, am I on over there? Okay, yeah, there are cards at your table. I did say that there were hard ones in my pocket, so let's start with one from my pocket.
Supposed to give me a softball first, Lyle.
Well, as a fellow Northeast Kingdom person, having grown up in Newport, I know all about the travel you had this morning, so thank you for being here. The governor and the Agency of Education have unveiled a bold education funding strategy with more on governance reforms to come. How do you feel about that? What do you think about public education in the state? What do we need to do from your vantage point?
Yeah, thank you, Lyle. My personal perspective is it's a great proposal that has been a long time coming. We have done, I think, 29 studies in the last 30 years, and we've implemented hardly anything. So the legislature, every time they can't decide what should be done, they order another study, which costs us a lot of money. So we've spent millions of dollars over the years and implemented none of the suggestions. So this is a bold proposal that is taking a lot of the suggestions of the past and reshaping education. From my perspective, it appears that not only is it going to address the escalation in cost and make it more affordable, but it's going to be better for the kids, better education. We're going to be able to pay our teachers more, which they deserve. And I think education has a lot of things in common with healthcare. We're spending too darn much on administration in the business office and not enough on the teachers and the staff and the doctors and the nurses who are providing the service on the ground. And that's what this proposal does. Cuts down on the overhead and the administration and puts the focus back on the kids where it should be. We're going to be able to improve early child education. We're going to be able to offer more after school. So not only is it going to save money, but it's going to provide more services, better services for our students. And I'm hoping that by refocusing and having a curriculum that's offered statewide, that we're going to get back to teaching the basics, because Vermont is among the highest in spenders. But I think right now Mississippi's outperforming us, and they're one of the lowest spenders when it comes to testing the kids. So we're spending a lot. We're not getting the results. This is a great proposal. I'm hoping the legislature can work their way through it, because it's going to take a few years to implement. And we have got to get started, because we know that Vermonters can no longer afford the system that we have. And we know that our kids' test scores aren't very good. So we need to change the way we're providing instruction.
If you've been following that, the governor and the Agency of Education are looking to reduce the number of districts in the state of Vermont from well over 100 to 5 districts with very large number or larger numbers of students within each one of those districts. Representative Harrison has also introduced a bill which I really like, and I told him that this morning, because we really like Representative Harrison, is focusing things around tech centers where there might be 16 or 17 different districts all focused in a hub and spoke model around tech centers. So change is coming. What that looks like is yet to be determined, but the conversation has started, which is excellent. How can your platform as Lieutenant Governor market to Gen 2 social media folks and able workers who want a second career upon retirement? We're looking at keeping the younger folks there, which you've mentioned,
Yeah.
but there's also folks like maybe me who might want a second career someday. How do you market to both of those sectors?
Well, I think
In
in
your
some aspects, I think you can actually offer a lot of folks the same exact thing. I've talked with several people recently. I know my wife went to college to become a registered nurse at 40. One of my friends was telling me about a friend of hers that's already had a career, and I think he was in his upper 40s or near 50, and he just went back and got his license to be an electrician. So there's a lot of retraining we can do for adults that are maybe underemployed and want to, go back, and hopefully we have a lot of great adult learning centers around the state, but that's something else we can look into utilizing our tech centers more to do. But I think if we show our youth what opportunities are out there, I know when I was in high school, our guidance counselor was very mediocre. He really didn't show us the options. I have no idea what the average student gets for guidance about what is out there. And so I think we need to just make sure that all our kids, and not wait till senior year, make sure when they're freshmen and sophomores, they're getting an opportunity to see what's out there. They can look at what the average pay is, look at what the work takes in, and hopefully be able to get them out in the field. Apprenticeships, I think, are one of the greatest ways to teach our youth. And we know that we have a lot of our youth that doesn't like sitting in a classroom, especially boys. Get them out in the field, put a hammer in their hand, put a wrench in their hand, give them something that they enjoy doing in a way that they enjoy learning. And the thing that I love about the trades, that I love about the work that I do, doing stonework, when I get done a project, I can stand back and look at it and go, yeah, I built that. It's going to be there for generations, and it made the people's place more functional. And it's the same with all those things, whether you're helping plumb a house or wire a house or put a roof on a house. It's something concrete that you can look at and say, I did that, I got paid for it, and I think that's something that we can offer both our youth and older people who want to retrain.
Should first shout out Representative Nielsen, who has entered the room. He was working with his constituents this morning. He's right over here, if you'd raise your hand. Outstanding. Representative Nielsen from the Brandon area. All right. A federal court said fluoridation poses neurotoxic risks to infants. Should the state put a pause on its endorsement of community water fluoridation?
I'm awful lucky. I live at the top of the watershed and have my own drilled well. I'm not a big fan of chlorine or fluoride in my water, but I think I'll leave the whole fluoridation argument to the scientists and the doctors. I like my water straight out of the ground.
That's a non-political answer. All right, good. What God gives us, I will drink. Thank you very much. All right. All right. We have a problem here in Rutland City, and that problem is that the 3-acre rule has created issues for some of our businesses. Specifically, the Rutland Fair. So in part of that, and I'll read the question here, have there been any discussions surrounding the 3-acre rule and relief or more assistance for landowners? For example, the situation has a price tag for the Vermont State Fair of $3.7 million, which will certainly put us out of business. So there is a watershed area with a number of businesses and homes within Rutland City that the penalties that will come along with what's happening really doesn't support the process. So a penalty could be as high for the Rutland Fair, and Robert knows better than I do, but a penalty could be $150,000, which is just saying you didn't make a good choice by purchasing that land. The problem with purchasing the land is nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right.
It's not grandfathered in any way. And so I'm sure there might be a couple businesses along the route that this watershed is taking that might not have purchased that property had they known they were going to be penalized. And now the Rutland Fair, the Vermont State Fair, how many years, Robert? 179. 179 years. Let's give that a round of applause. That's amazing. We can't let the Rutland Fair, we can't let the Vermont State Fair and other businesses and other fairs around the state go out of business. They don't have deep pockets. How do we back in, and everybody wants clean water, we just talked about that. Everybody wants clean water. We will do everything that we can for clean air, clean water, but how do we resolve this so we don't put businesses like the Vermont State Fair out of business?
Well, the first thing is we need to restore a little bit more balance back to the State House, because most of these new rules were implemented under the supermajority, very few of whom have owned and run businesses. And so there's just a lack of education there for one thing. But yeah, there's a ton of businesses, farms, probably every fairground in the entire state that's affected by that. And if they find them, that $150,000 is less they have to put into improving the infrastructure. So from my perspective, we need to give people the space and the technical assistance and let them work on these improvements as they can, because like you said, this is sprung on them, and there's a whole bunch of people that wouldn't have bought those properties. This is the brand new rule that's going backwards, and I think that's always problematic. So we have quite a lot of problems with the Agency of Natural Resources, especially with the Department of Environmental Conservation. Businesses that are getting through Act 250, and then wetlands holds them up, and big fines on businesses and farmers when they should be there assisting them, going, this is how to improve so that you don't have this problem. What we have is an agency that is supposed to work for the taxpayers and work for businesses, but they have, I think, become more activist and enforcers, and they seem, some of them, not all of them, but some of them seem to, instead of helping people, go right for implementing fines. We know that the majority of people aren't doing things wrong because they want to. There's no way to know every single thing you're supposed to do, and they continuously change the rules, and not every company has somebody that can just sit there in front of the computer looking at Agency of Natural Resources website every day to see what they're expecting of us. So there are some serious problems in the agency that I hope we'll be able to address, and I hope if we can restore, I hope we have enough balance there that we can make some progress in these next 2 years, but I'm hoping in 2 years we can get a little closer to a true balance. Like when I first came in 2003, it was very balanced, and actually the moderate Democrats and Republicans and the handful of independents in the middle could swing the vote both ways. So there was never one party running over the top of the others. And I think that's what needs to be restored in Montpelier.
And so, a similar vein, the governor appears to be poised to roll back components of the clean air or clean heat bill. What is your stance on that? And should that funding be redirected, or funding towards that effort be redirected to underfunded areas like healthcare?
Well, I think there's a couple different issues there. The clean heat standard should not be implemented. And in fact, if you look at the policies that the legislature has implemented over the last 10 to 20 years that are supposed to be targeting climate change, every single one of them is regressive. Every single one of them is costing the people who can afford it the least more of their family's budgets than it is the people who can afford it the most. I think we need to take a look at all those policies and revamp them. We need to be doing what we can to make sure this planet is healthy for our kids and grandkids, but we can't bankrupt Vermonters on the way to doing it. And let's recognize the fact that if we could magically get rid of all the carbon in Vermont tomorrow, we are still going to have bad storms and there is still going to be climate change, because most everything we buy that comes from China is built with coal power. They're still building coal power plants. Tons of third world countries are still doing whatever they can to put electricity on their grid. Everything has an impact. We know that fossil fuels pollute, but so does the mining for rare earth minerals to make some of the stuff we're using in the energy transformation. So when we look at any of those policies, we can't just look at what an electric car looks like when it's on the ground in Vermont. Because if you drop the electric car and the fossil fuel car side by side, the electric car is better for the planet once they're on the ground. But when 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Congo and is mined by child and slave labor, I don't think you can call a battery with cobalt that's been mined by child and slave labor green when it gets here. So we have to be careful that we are not externalizing the pain to other countries that are out of our view. This is a planet, and if we are truly pretending that if we're truly affecting climate change, we have to stop pretending that we can externalize those costs.
Well, speaking of tariffs,
Yeah.
7 Days recently reported that Vermont imports $2.6 billion in goods from Canada annually, and Canada is the state's largest trading partner, bigger than the next 5 largest foreign markets combined. We've been hearing that President Trump is proposing tariffs on energy and imports from Canada starting tomorrow. What do you expect the impact will be on Vermonters, electric costs, and so forth?
If the tariffs are implemented, we're going to spend a lot more money than we're spending today on a lot of things, like power from Hydro-Quebec, Vermont gas, lumber. Almost all of our lumber goes up to Canada now as raw material and comes back because our government, I believe, failed miserably when they let the last few big sawmills go out of business here. We know that anybody that's trying to building materials are already extremely expensive. This is going to add 25% straight up. We're going to pay it. I think it's a horrible policy that's going to cost Vermonters and especially the people in states along the northern tier, but it's going to cost everybody in the U.S. for a lot of these products. I just met with a representative from Hydro-Quebec last week. They are very worried about it because they see us as a partner. I see them as a partner. I grew up 25 miles from the Canadian border. When I was a kid, you hardly knew there was a border there. That has changed dramatically. The people that I know that lived on the border, they'd walk back and forth across the border to their Canadian neighbors. Now, you walk across that border and flashing lights and helicopters and guns drawn come at you. It's sad what has happened between us and Canada My family, my mother's side of the family, actually landed in Canada in the 1600s and migrated down to Vermont. So we have a lot of connections, a lot of families still in Canada, and I hardly ever go anymore because how you get treated at the border. So I'm saddened that he has even proposed these tariffs, and I'm hoping that there's a last minute change of heart and that they get canceled, because it's going to cost us a lot of money. And like I said earlier, the cost of living here is already excessive.
Well, there was a report recently, and I'm not going to get the number right, but it said something like every person in the U.S. is going to pay another $3,600 a year or something like that because of the tariffs that are being proposed. Back to housing. We won't solve the affordability housing problem until we recognize home prices and apartment rents are set by the market in response to the law of supply and demand. Will this administration and legislature focus on streamlining the permit process for developing multifamily housing and single-family housing to increase the supply?
I hope they will. They pretended they did last year in the Act 250 bill, but it didn't do the job. They made it easier to develop in some places, and let's face it, some of those places that they made it easy to develop multifamily units and apartments don't have the sewer capacity. Their sewers are already running over when we get a heavy rainstorm, and personally, I don't believe we should be adding to a sewer system that's already dumping raw sewage into our waterways. That's just me. But they also made it harder to develop in rural Vermont. And if you want to live in an apartment in downtown anywhere Vermont, that is great. But I don't want to live there. I live out in the sticks, and I love it that way. And a lot of our young people that I've talked to recently want a little house in a rural community where they can have a garden and they can have a few animals and they can feel like they're raising their own food and being more independent. You can't do that in an apartment in the city. So there's a lot of different people, and let's accept their differences, and that not everybody wants to live in town, and that we have to make it affordable and predictable to develop wherever people want to develop. And that's one of the problems we have with wetlands. Thank you. Wetlands, the DEC wetlands is actually holding up a lot of housing around the state. I've got a friend that's trying to put in a little 6-unit development for rentals, and he's been held up for 2 years. And so between the holdups from Act 250, if a adjoining neighbor complains about it, we've had some housing developments that were held up for 10 years, to somebody that's trying to do a smaller one individually. We've got a lot of holdups, and the permitting needs to be affordable and predictable. We need to find a way to either get to, yes, this is a good development we want in Vermont, or no, it isn't, in a reasonable amount of time, because most developers don't have the patience or the money to wait in the queue for 10 years. So that's a serious problem.
It is. And Act 250 is not insurmountable. And here's an example about Rutland. You may hear that there may be a potential hotel downtown. And part of that was about to be slowed down because the local Act 250 coordinator said, well, you can't do commercial development and residential development. Those are two different things, even though both were allowed under Act 250. The person said, when you put them together, it doesn't work. Well, thank you to Cooper Babbitt, from Operations Director at Chamber and Economic Development. He said, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. So he used his Middlebury degree to do some research and wrote a letter that I think it was the mayor and our 3 senators signed, and sent it up to the governor. And the governor said, that doesn't make much sense. So he went to the Agency of Natural Resources, and they reversed their decision, and now they will be able to build the hotel, assuming everything goes the way we would like it to go, and Act 250 did not slow them down. So there are opportunities to make change, and so how will you use your role as Lieutenant Governor to make change in Montpelier? What is your role, and what influence do you have in change?
We're going to start by cloning Cooper. Every area needs one. I feel like my role is getting out to things like this and all around the state to hear what people are thinking. We have a lot of bright people around this state. And the problem in the State House is that they often operate in a bubble. They talk to each other, they talk to department heads, and they talk to the lobbyists in the building, and they forget that they represent people on the ground. I'm not saying that about your representatives and senators, they're great. But some of the others, and so I see myself as a conduit or a bridge between every community and the State House, and also between the Senate and the House and the Democrats and the Republicans. I just want, we put together a couple rallies last spring. That's what drew me into this whole thing, and people convincing me to run for statewide office, and it's why I'm here today. And we had people from pretty far left and pretty far right and a ton of people in the middle that came together on this rally to push back against several of the bills that were moving through the legislature. And the premise we started with is we're not going to agree on everything. But we focused on that large percentage of stuff in the middle that we agreed on. And we all worked together to push against it. And that's what I want to try to do, is say, okay, we can't agree on this, we can't agree on that, jettison that. Please, can we move forward on the stuff that we agree is good for Vermonters and is going to make Vermont a better place?
And as part of that, does the governor include you in his administration and in policy making?
I am invited to a weekly meeting and in contact with his people constantly. We get looks at different proposals that they're putting out before it generally comes out in the public. So yes, we're very involved with the governor, appreciate his support and including us, because that was not the case with the person who was in this position previously.
Also in the news is immigration. What role should immigration and refugees play in a growing Vermont economy and population? Do you currently support the deportations of undocumented migrants?
Well, I think we have to be real careful in how we go about immigration, because immigrants, some legal and some not, are a large portion of everything we eat in the grocery store. And I know a ton of farmers who employ people from Mexico, and without them, the cows won't get milked, the crops won't get picked, and it's happening all around the country. I don't think that we should have an open border where hundreds of thousands of people can come through. But from my perspective, for years, Washington, D.C. has been completely dysfunctional. We've known it was a problem for many years, and they haven't fixed it, like so many other things, because they would rather have a partisan bickering fest than actually work for the American people. We have Afghan refugees in this state that are under threat of being deported, people who risked their lives and worked side by side with our military and were promised protection because their lives were at risk if they stayed there, their families' lives were at risk. I think our government needs to live up to his promises, and when somebody risks their life to help our military be safer in a foreign land, we need to live up to those promises. So it's a complex issue, but just a blanket deport everybody is dangerous to you think groceries are expensive now. I heard a news report the other day about a farmer in California whose crops were ready to pick, and 2 days after these announcements, 65% of his workforce didn't show up, and he said that stuff was going to rot in the fields. Groceries are already out of control right now. So I think we have to be very careful when we're talking about deporting people who are working in the ag industry, who are paying taxes, who are paying Social Security, and are not criminals. They're living the way that they should live. So I'm hoping that the federal government gets that. Otherwise, on top of all the tariffs, our groceries are going to spike again.
Well, on my to-do list this Saturday was to go grocery shopping, and I guess I need to go more often because the eggs were like $5.99, and they were the cheapest ones I could get.
They're
So,
$8.99 this week.
yeah, so, right. And if you want to learn more about Lieutenant Governor John Rodgers, he will be doing a View from the Top podcast today with Bill Lucci at the Hub Coworks. That will be dropping in a couple weeks, and you'll learn more about John, his background, his family, and all. You can also go to 7 Days article that was recently put out. Great article about John and the things that he's done and plans to do in the future, including, you say that the quality of outcomes of education is going to improve. How will you defend against the decline of parent engagement and after-school activities, which may decline due to busing if communities are, or if school districts are much larger? And how do you keep communities cohesive around their schools? In Vermont, schools have been the place, the community center. How does that continue if we do restructuring?
Yeah, it's gonna take some work. In the governor's plan, there are, and I can't remember all the details, but there is going to be an avenue for local input. We are going to try to save as many of the elementary schools as possible, because we know that small kids shouldn't be bused as far as high school kids. So there are a lot of things in the policy that is targeting that. We know that we have some schools that should be closed because the school building doesn't work programmatically. Many of these buildings need millions of dollars worth of work, and there's another better school that's not full right down the road, a mile or two or three. We have to look at every possibility, and there's going to be some painful decisions to be made. We know that. In my speech on the day I got inaugurated, or sworn in, whatever you want to call it, I asked the legislators for two things: be honest and be courageous. We were elected to be leaders, and leaders don't get to make easy decisions all the time. Some of these decisions are going to be painful, but we know the system we have today is not working. Our kids are coming out with poor test scores, and everybody I'm talking to is telling me they can't afford it any longer. And so we're going to do the best we can, and the community's important, and we need to figure out more ways for communities to stay together, because I think ever since the dawn of computers and the internet, we've lost a lot of community in the structure that I grew up in.
So a final question, I'm combining two, one of which is, how should educators be involved in that transformation? They're the boots on the ground. They're the ones in the classroom. You have commended them here today. How should they be involved in this transformation as it takes place? It seems like there are folks who may not have been in education who are making some of the decisions. Should the educators be involved? And then the second part of that question is, how do we make sure that we are training kids for the modern economy?
Yep. As I said before, when we're talking about healthcare, doctors and nurses should be involved. They're the ones seeing it on the ground. When we're talking about education, teachers and staff that are providing the direct services need to be listened to. We need to make sure that our teaching schools are teaching educators properly so that they can educate. It's quite disturbing to me that a lot of schools, I think 10 or 12 years ago, transformed the way they teach reading, and they stopped teaching phonics, which I think is absolutely absurd. I don't understand why you would teach kids to look at the pictures and guess about what the words are. That's fine for kids that are very small, helps improve their imagination, but when they get into school, they need to be taught reading in a scientific manner with phonics so they know how to read when there's no pictures on those pages anymore. So I think there's a huge amount that our teachers can do, but I want to make sure at the college level that the instruction teachers are getting is actually scientific-based education that's been proven for years and years, and not try some of these new age learning methods that I don't think have been working based on the test scores.
So, John, I want to thank you for what you're doing now. It is thankless often. People don't often agree with everyone, but I think everyone appreciates the fact that you want to bring people together with a common voice, everyone working across the aisle, and maybe eliminating that aisle and making it so that it's just Vermonters that we're talking about. I don't know what's going to happen with the 30 driveways that you plow for the rest of the winter. I don't know what's going to happen with your other 3 businesses. I think you're a perfect example of a Vermonter, a person who has a farm and has to use it to its fullest to make sure you continue to have that farm and can prosper on that farm. Thank you for being our new Lieutenant Governor, ladies and gentlemen, John Rodgers.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I won't go through the litany of all of the different things that you can come to with the Chamber and Economic Development. We thank you for coming today. There's probably muffins over here. If you took 3 or 4 of those, I'm sure people would appreciate that. So have a great day, and thank you for being here today.